The video opens with a woman, Maya in her early 30s, sitting in a beautifully designed, minimalist living room. The lighting is soft and natural. She looks directly at the camera, her expression calm, but with a deep sadness in her eyes. She takes a quiet, steadying breath before she begins. At my own baby shower, my grandmother took the heirloom quilt, the one hand-stitched by 4 generations of women in my family, and gave it to my sister. In front of all my friends and family, she held it up, walked right past me, and declared that my unborn child wasn't worthy of our family's legacy. She thought I would cry. She thought I would crumble. She was wrong. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, waited for the party to end, and then I dismantled the entire financial support system I had quietly built for her and my sister for the last 10 years. The next morning, their world started to fall apart, and mine, for the first time, finally started to feel whole. It was supposed to be a perfect day. Not perfect in the Instagram-filtered, everything is beige kind of way, but my kind of perfect. I'm an architect. I thrive on structure, on clean lines, on creating spaces that feel both beautiful and functional. My baby shower was my design project. My partner Liam and I had spent weeks planning it. We live in a city 3 states away from my hometown, in a restored brownstone that's all exposed brick, steel beams, and big, beautiful windows. It's my sanctuary. For one day, I wanted to share that sanctuary with everyone. My family, of course, saw it as a cold, modern box. My grandmother, Nonna, had made her opinion clear over the phone. An architect? Why couldn't you just be a teacher, Maya? Something with heart. My sister Chloe was more subtle. Oh, it's so you, Maya. Very urban. The guest list was a mix of our 2 worlds. My friends from the city, fellow architects, designers, friends from our yoga studio, mingled awkwardly with my family, who had driven up in a caravan of dusty SUVs. They clustered together near the food table I'd catered with artisanal cheeses and fig jam, looking at the prosciutto-wrapped melon skewers like they were alien specimens. "Where's the potato salad?" my Uncle Frank bellowed. I just smiled. The centerpiece of the entire event, the reason for the simmering tension you could cut with a butter knife, was the quilt. It was draped carefully over a wooden armchair in the corner, a place of honor, the generations quilt. Started by my great-great-grandmother in Italy, each woman in our family had added a square before her first child was born. It was a kaleidoscope of fabrics and memories. A piece of a christening gown from 1922, a swatch of my grandfather's army uniform, a silk patch from my mother's wedding dress. It was our history, and tradition dictated it was passed to the firstborn daughter of each new generation to welcome her first child into the world. I was that daughter, and this was my first child. Chloe, my younger sister by 2 years, was also pregnant. 4 months behind me. This fact hung in the air, thick and unspoken. She and her husband Rick still lived in our hometown, just 2 blocks from Nonna. Chloe was the one who had done everything right. She married her high school sweetheart, stayed local, and worked part-time at a boutique she'd started, a boutique I'd quietly funded. She was the golden child. I was the prodigal one, the one who left for the big city and built a life that they didn't understand. Throughout the party, Nonna held court. She'd touch my belly and say, "So small. Are you sure you're eating enough? Chloe is showing so beautifully." She'd look at Liam, who is of Irish descent, and say, "Such a shame the baby won't have a good, strong Italian name." Liam would just squeeze my hand, his silent, steadfast support, a balm against the 1,000 tiny cuts. Chloe would float by, rubbing her own barely there bump, sighing about how she was already buying legacy pieces for her nursery, with a pointed look at the quilt. I ignored it all. I focused on my friends, on the joy, on the tiny kicks I could feel from within. I believed naively that decency would win, that the public setting and the presence of my friends would act as a shield. I thought that for all her sharp edges, Nonna wouldn't dare humiliate me on a day that was meant to celebrate the life I was bringing into the world. I had never been more wrong. The tension started as a low hum and grew into a roaring silence. It was time for gifts. My friends had showered me with thoughtful, beautiful things. A handcrafted wooden mobile, a collection of classic children's books, a ridiculously soft cashmere baby blanket. I was flushed with gratitude, feeling the warmth spread through my chest, pushing back the anxiety that had been clawing at my throat all afternoon. I opened the last gift from my city friends, thanked everyone, and thought the ordeal was over. Then Nonna stood up. She cleared her throat, a theatrical sound that commanded immediate attention. The room fell silent. She walked over to the armchair where the Generations quilt was displayed. Her hands, gnarled with age but still surprisingly strong, smoothed over the fabric. "For over 100 years," she began, her voice resonating with practiced gravitas, "this quilt has been a symbol of our family, of our roots. It represents the strength of our women, the endurance of our legacy. It is meant to wrap the newest member of our line, to connect them to all who came before." She lifted the quilt from the chair. It unfolded in a cascade of color and history. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment of validation. The moment where she would finally, publicly, acknowledge me. She looked directly at me. Her eyes weren't warm. They were like chips of flint. "Tradition is important. It is the bedrock of a family. It's about honoring those who came before you by continuing their way of life." She took a step, and then another, but not towards me. She walked right past my chair, past my outstretched hands, past my stunned open mouth. She walked towards Chloe, who was sitting on the other side of the room, a look of beatific triumph dawning on her face. Nonna stopped in front of her. "Chloe," she said, her voice softening into a tone of deep affection I hadn't heard directed at me since I was a small child. "You have honored this family. You stayed. You built your life where you were planted. You are continuing our legacy in the way it was meant to be continued." She placed the quilt into my sister's lap. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in the glasses. My friend Sarah, sitting next to me, made a small, choked sound. Liam's hand found mine, his grip so tight it was almost painful. But Nonna wasn't finished. She turned back to face me, her expression now one of cold justification. "Maya," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "We love you, but a legacy is not just about blood. It is about commitment. You chose a different path. You chose to leave. Your child will be raised in a different world, with different values." She gestured vaguely around my apartment, as if the clean lines and open space were evidence of a moral failing. "This quilt," she said, her voice dropping, "belongs with a child who will be raised within the heart of this family. A child who will be worthy of it." Worthy of it. The words didn't just hang in the air. detonated. A wave of heat washed over my skin. I saw it all in a flash. The faces of my friends, a mixture of horror and pity. The faces of my relatives, my uncle, my aunts, nodding in grim agreement. And Chloe, clutching the quilt to her chest, tears of manufactured joy streaming down her face, looking at me with an expression that said, "I won. I finally won." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. Something inside me, something that had been bent for 30 years, didn't break. It solidified. It turned to steel. I stood up slowly, placing a hand on my belly. I looked around the room, making eye contact with no one and everyone at the same time. And I smiled. A calm, serene, terrifyingly empty smile. "Thank you all so much for coming," I said, my voice perfectly even. "It means the world to us. Liam and I are a little tired, so we're going to wrap things up now. Please, help yourselves to some cake on your way out." There was a confused shuffle. My city friends, bless them, understood immediately. They started gathering their things, giving me tight, fierce hugs and whispering, "Are you okay? Call me tonight. We love you." They filed out, their departing glances a mixture of rage on my behalf and deep concern. My family, however, was bewildered. "Wrap things up?" my aunt sputtered. "But we just got here." Nonna looked at me, her brow furrowed. She had expected tears, pleading, an argument. She had not expected this calm, decisive dismissal. "Maya, don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said, still smiling that vacant smile. "I'm just tired. It's been a long day." I walked over to Liam and took his hand. "Thank you for helping, everyone. Drive safely." It was a command, not a suggestion. One by one, confused and grumbling, they began to leave. Chloe clutched the quilt like it was a life raft, refusing to meet my eyes. At the door, Nonna turned. "You're making a mistake," she hissed, her voice low. "You are isolating yourself. You will regret this." "I don't think I will," I said softly. I closed the door behind her, not with a slam, but with a quiet, definitive click, the sound of a lock turning, the sound of a vault closing, the sound of an ending, and a beginning. The past is never really past, is it? It just lies dormant, waiting for the right pressure to bring it all back to the surface. Standing there in my silent living room, surrounded by the remnants of a party that had turned into a public execution, I wasn't just reacting to a stolen quilt. I was reacting to a lifetime of it. I remember being 10 years old. Our elementary school had an annual art fair. The theme was My World. I spent weeks on my project. I didn't draw a picture of my house or my family like the other kids. I was obsessed with maps and cities even then. I built a diorama of a futuristic city out of cardboard boxes, toilet paper rolls, and tinfoil, with string and pulley elevators and bottle cap monorails. It was intricate, imaginative, and deeply weird. I was so proud of it. Chloe, who was 8, painted a watercolor of the rosebush in Nonna's garden. It was pretty. It was safe. It looked exactly like a rosebush. At the art fair, Nonna walked right past my sprawling metallic cityscape without a second glance. She stopped in front of Chloe's painting and gasped with delight. "Oh, Chloe, my darling, it's beautiful. You have a true artist's soul." She insisted on buying it from the school, had it professionally framed, and hung it in the most prominent spot in her living room. It's still there today. When I tried to show her my city, she patted my head. That's creative, Maya. Very busy. Your mind is always buzzing with such strange things. She didn't mean it as a compliment. She meant it as a diagnosis. Strange. Different. Not right. That was the template for our entire childhood. Chloe was the sunbeam. I was the shadow. Chloe was praised for her conformity, her sweetness, her willingness to be a smaller, simpler version of the women who came before her. I was the difficult one. I asked too many questions. I read books that were too advanced for me. I wanted to go to an out-of-state university to study architecture, a dream they treated like a declaration of war. Why would you leave? Nonna had demanded when I got my acceptance letter. Everything you need is right here. Your family is here. My future isn't here, I'd argued. Your future is with your family, she'd countered, as if the two were mutually exclusive. Leaving for college was the ultimate betrayal in their eyes. But it was also my salvation. It was where I met Liam. It was where I discovered I wasn't strange. I was talented. I graduated summa cum laude. I got a job at a prestigious firm. I built a life, brick by brick, that was entirely my own. And through it all, I was still the reliable one. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. They resented my success, but they were the first to benefit from it. When Nonna's 10-year-old car finally died, who got the call? Me. I co-signed the loan for her new one, a sensible sedan she immediately complained wasn't fancy enough. When my father, her son, passed away a few years ago, leaving her with a mountain of medical debt and a meager pension, who made sure her bills were paid every single month. Me. I set up an automatic transfer from my account to hers. A stipend, I called it. A gift. She called it what's owed. And Chloe, my sweet, perfect sister. Her boutique, Chloe's Cottage, that sold overpriced potpourri and rustic chic home decor. I gave her the $20,000 startup loan to open it, an interest-free loan with no repayment schedule. In other words, a gift. When her sales were slow, who paid for her to run ads in the local paper? Me. When she wanted to go to a trade show in Atlanta but couldn't afford the travel, who booked her flights and hotel? Me. I did it out of a tangled sense of guilt and duty. I did it because every time I didn't, Nonna's voice would echo in my head. You've abandoned us. You have so much, and we have so little. A good daughter would help. I did it to prove I wasn't the selfish monster they painted me as. I was buying their approval. I was paying for a peace that never truly came. And for all that, for the car, the bills, the business, the years of silent, thankless support, my reward was to sit in a room full of people I loved and be told that my child, my innocent, unborn child, was unworthy. Because I had the audacity to build a life they didn't choose for me. Liam found me standing in the dark, staring at the empty armchair where the quilt had been. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. He didn't say, "I told you so," though he had every right to. He had warned me for years about their casual cruelty. "What do you need?" he whispered. I leaned back into him, the warmth of his body a solid grounding force. I thought of the monthly payment to Nonna, scheduled to go out in 3 days. I thought of the credit card I paid for Chloe's business expenses. I thought of the years of being the family ATM, the silent benefactor, The reliable daughter who could be insulted and dismissed, but always be counted on to pay the bills. I looked at the empty chair and pictured a new quilt. One made of different fabrics. A piece of the shirt Liam wore on our first date. A swatch from the curtains in our first apartment. A patch from the ridiculously soft blanket Sarah had given me today. A new legacy. Our legacy. "I need my laptop," I said. My voice didn't waver. It was as solid and sure as the steel beams holding up our home. The first volley of texts came before I'd even had my morning coffee. They were, in a word, predictable. From Nonna. "I hope you slept on it and realize how much you hurt your sister. She was so excited. You ruined a beautiful family moment with your drama." From Chloe. "I can't believe you kicked everyone out. Everyone is talking about it. You humiliated me. I was just trying to honor Nonna's wishes. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" I didn't reply. I just took a sip of my decaf coffee and opened my online banking app. With a few clicks, the automatic monthly transfer to Nonna's account was cancelled. Next, I logged into the credit card portal. The card I had given Chloe for business emergencies had a recent charge for a $500 handbag and a business lunch at a spa. I lowered the credit limit to $1 and scheduled the account for closure. Then I sent a polite formal email to the investor relations address for Chloe's cottage, an email address that I knew went directly to her personal inbox. It was a notice of withdrawal of all future funding and a request for a formal repayment plan for the initial $20,000 loan, effective immediately, as per the good faith clause in our informal agreement. I knew there was no legal standing. It was a shot across the bow, a statement. The Bank of Maya was officially closed. I spent the rest of the week in a bubble of calm. Liam and I assembled the crib. We painted the nursery a soft, warm sage green. I went to my prenatal yoga class and focused on my breathing. I talked to my friends, who were incandescent with rage on my behalf. "You did the right thing," Sarah said fiercely. "They crossed a line that shouldn't even exist." For the first time, I didn't feel the familiar pang of guilt. I felt light. The silence from my family lasted exactly 4 days. The day the monthly stipend would have landed in Nonna's account. The first call came from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Nonna. Her voice was tight, laced with a confusion that was rapidly curdling into anger. "Maya, I think you forgot to send the money. The mortgage is due. Please call me back immediately." An hour later, Chloe called. I answered. "What did you do?" she shrieked, without so much as a hello. "Good morning to you too, Chloe. Don't play games with me. My business card was declined. I got an email about repaying the loan. And Nonna is freaking out because her money isn't there. What is wrong with you?" "I decided to make some changes to my budget," I said calmly. As an architect, I appreciate fiscal responsibility. I'm sure as a business owner, you can understand that. "A business owner? I can't run my business without your help. You know that." "Well," I said, my voice dangerously sweet, "then perhaps it's not a very viable business, is it?" I could hear her sputtering on the other end of the line. "This is because of the quilt, isn't it? You're throwing a tantrum and punishing everyone because of a stupid blanket." "It's not a stupid blanket, Chloe. It's our history. And it wasn't a tantrum. It was a clarification. You and Nonna clarified my position in the family. Now I'm clarifying yours in my finances. You are no longer a dependent." But Nonna needs that money. For the house. For her medicine. Nonna receives a pension and Social Security. She owns her home. The mortgage is small, She'll have to learn to live within her means, like the rest of the world. You are a monster, she whispered, her voice filled with venom. A cold, selfish monster. No, Chloe, I said, and for the first time, I felt a deep, profound sadness for her. I'm just not your safety net anymore. I hung up the phone. The real confrontation, I knew, was yet to come. It came 2 days later, on a Saturday morning. The doorbell rang, insistent and angry. Liam answered it. It was Nonna and Chloe. They had driven the 3 hours from their town and were standing on my doorstep, their faces masks of fury. We need to talk to Maya, Nonna said, trying to push past Liam. Liam is 6'2" and built like the rugby player he used to be. He didn't move. She doesn't want to talk to you. We are her family. You will let us in. I appeared in the hallway behind him. It's okay, Liam. Let them in. They stormed into my living room. Nonna's eyes immediately went to the empty armchair in the corner. You did this to spite me, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You cut me off. Your own grandmother. I stopped paying for the privilege of being disrespected in my own home, I said, my voice level. I gestured for them to sit. They remained standing, a united front of indignation. Privilege? Chloe scoffed. It's your duty. You're the one with all the money. I have money because I worked for it, I shot back. I went to college. I built a career. I made sacrifices. The sacrifices you and Nonna called a betrayal. You can't have it both ways. You can't condemn my life while cashing my checks. I am your grandmother. Nonna's voice rose. I raised you. I deserve your respect. Respect is earned, Nonna. It isn't an entitlement program. You stood in this room and called my child unworthy. You declared in front of everyone that my life, my choices, my family were second-rate. That is not a beautiful family moment. That is a calculated act of cruelty, and I will not fund it anymore. You are tearing this family apart, Chloe cried, tears welling in her eyes. Because of you, Nonna could lose her house. If Nonna loses her house, I said, my gaze locking onto my grandmother's, it will be because she has spent years living beyond her means, under the assumption that I would be her eternal backstop. If your business fails, Chloe, it's because it's not profitable without my constant cash infusions. These are the consequences of your own choices, not my punishment. I'm simply removing myself from the equation. Nonna took a step closer, her face contorted. Your great-grandmother would be ashamed of you. That was the line, the one I had been waiting for. No, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but carrying more weight than if I had screamed. I think she would be ashamed of you. She started that quilt with scraps of fabric, with love and hope for the future. She wove a story of resilience. You've turned it into a weapon. You've used our history to wound and to control. That is the ultimate betrayal of her legacy. I looked from my sister's tear-streaked face to my grandmother's hardened one. I saw no remorse, no understanding, only a deep, bottomless well of entitlement. The conversation is over, I said, turning my back on them. Liam will see you out. As they left, Chloe's final words echoed in the hallway. You'll be all alone, Maya, and you'll deserve it. I stood there, listening to the front door close, and placed a hand on my belly. Alone? No. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally, truly, protecting my family. The weeks that followed were a cascade of falling dominoes. The fallout wasn't loud and explosive. It was a series of quiet, pathetic implosions that I heard about through the family grapevine. Specifically, my cousin Tessa, who had always been a neutral party and called to check on me. First, Chloe's cottage went dark. Her social media pages, once a flurry of filtered photos of mason jars and burlap ribbons, fell silent. Then, a closed for renovations sign appeared on the door. Tessa told me the truth. Chloe couldn't make her rent. The landlord had changed the locks. She had tried to get a bank loan, but without a co-signer and with no history of actual profit, she was denied. She blamed me, of course. In a string of vitriolic texts, she accused me of destroying her dream. She never once acknowledged that her dream had been a hobby I was bankrolling. Then there was Nonna. The initial panic turned into a campaign of weaponized guilt. She left long, rambling voicemails, detailing her mounting bills. "The electricity is due, Maya. They're going to turn it off. I'll be sitting here in the dark. Is that what you want for your grandmother?" She told my aunts and uncles that I had abandoned her, that I was leaving her to starve. She conveniently omitted the part about her pension, her social security, and the fact that she had refused to sell the oversized house she couldn't afford to live in the small, manageable condo I had offered to help her buy years ago. The real tipping point, however, wasn't about money. It was about control. About 3 months after the baby shower, I received a certified letter. It was from a lawyer in my hometown. My heart sank. Was she actually trying to sue me? It was worse. It was a petition for grandparents' rights. She was preemptively suing for court-ordered visitation with my unborn child. The letter was filled with legal jargon, but the message was clear. It alleged that I was emotionally unstable, that I was unreasonably denying a relationship between my child and its loving family, and that it was in the child's best interest to have a mandated connection to its heritage, a heritage personified by Nonna herself. I stared at the letter, my blood running cold. This wasn't about love for a child she hadn't even met. This was a power play. This was her trying to legislate her way back into my life, to use the legal system to enforce the control she had lost. She couldn't manipulate me with guilt, so she was trying to do it with a judge. Liam found me in the nursery, holding the letter, my hands shaking. He read it, and his face, usually so open and kind, hardened into something I had never seen before. "Oh, hell no," he breathed. "We hired a lawyer that same day. A sharp, no-nonsense woman from the city who specialized in family law." When I explained the situation, the financial history, the public humiliation at the shower, the reason I cut contact, she leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. "This is a classic narcissistic maneuver," she said calmly. "When they lose control, they try to burn everything down. But they have no case. Zero. In this state, grandparents' rights are almost impossible to get, especially when there's no pre-existing relationship and both parents are fit and in agreement. This is a harassment tactic. It's designed to scare you and drain your resources." She was right. It was terrifying. The thought of having to face them in court, of having to defend my right to protect my child from their toxicity, made me feel sick. But as I looked around the beautiful, peaceful nursery we had built, a different feeling took over. A fierce, primal wave of protectiveness. They had come after me my whole life. Now they were coming after my baby. They had left me no choice. "So what do we do?" I asked our lawyer. She smiled, a thin, sharp smile. "We don't just defend," she said. We countersue for legal fees and file a restraining order for harassment. The open-endedness of the future used to scare me. Now, it feels like an open sky. The legal battle was short and brutal, but not for me. Our lawyer was right. Nonna's case was thrown out at the first hearing. The judge was not impressed by her petition, especially when our lawyer presented the timeline of events, the decades of financial support, the incident at the baby shower, witnessed by a dozen people, and the immediate cessation of contact, followed by a lawsuit. The judge called her petition frivolous and malicious, and granted our request for her to pay all our legal fees. He also granted a temporary restraining order, warning her that any further contact would have serious consequences. The news of their defeat rippled through the family. Chloe, I heard, had to move back in with Nonna. Her husband, Rick, a quiet man I'd never disliked, had apparently had enough of the drama and her refusal to get a real job. They were separated. Nonna, faced with a mountain of her own debt, plus the bill for my high-powered city lawyer, was finally forced to put her house on the market. The house she had used as a symbol of her martyrdom was now just an asset to be liquidated. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes a flicker of it crosses my mind in the dead of night. A whisper of the old programming. A good daughter would have found another way. But then I walk into the nursery and look at my daughter, Elara, sleeping in her crib, and the guilt vanishes, replaced by a fierce, unshakable certainty. My daughter will never have to earn her mother's love. She will never be told her spirit is too much or too strange. She will never have her worthiness questioned in a room full of people. She will never be used as a pawn in a game of emotional blackmail. The cycle of not good enough that has run through the women in my family for generations ends here. It ends with me. The generations quilt is still with Chloe, I assume. I imagine it's packed away in a box in some storage unit, its colors fading in the dark. A symbol of a legacy that chose pride over love, tradition over people. It feels like a relic from another life. In its place, a new quilt is taking shape. It's draped over the same armchair where the old one once sat. I started it the week after Elara was born. It's not perfect. My stitches are uneven. My squares don't line up perfectly. But it's ours. It has a square from Liam's favorite flannel shirt, a patch from the dress I wore home from the hospital, a piece of the first onesie Elara wore, stained with a little bit of spit-up. It has a swatch of soft sage-green fabric from her nursery wall. It's a map of our love. A new history we are writing for ourselves. One stitch at a time. My family is smaller now, but it is stronger. It is built not on obligation or DNA, but on a foundation of genuine love and mutual respect. It's my friends who became my sisters, showing up with meals and support without ever being asked. It's Liam, my partner in every sense of the word, who stood as a shield between me and the storm. And it's Elara, my beautiful daughter, who taught me that a mother's most important job isn't to keep the peace, but to create a safe harbor. The lesson in all of this is not about revenge. It's about reclamation. It's about reclaiming your right to decide who gets a place in your life. Family isn't just about the people you're born to. It's about the people who help you be born into the person you were always meant to be. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for your children is to close the door, to say no more, to choose your own peace over their chaos, and to finally build a home within yourself that no one can ever take away from you. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. This journey has been the hardest and most rewarding of my life, and sharing it feels like the final step in closing that chapter. I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family to protect your own peace or your children? What does the word legacy really mean to you? Let me know in the comments below. Your stories matter, and they make us all feel a little less alone in these complicated, beautiful lives we lead. And if my story resonated with you, please consider subscribing. There's so much more to build together.